Lieutenant Colonel Blair Paddy Mayne was one of the most formidable Special Forces commanders of the Second World War. From the deserts of North Africa to the battlefields of occupied Europe, his wartime service was characterized by raw intensity, defiance, and fearless resolve. As a key architect of the Special Air Service in its formative years, Mayne played a pivotal role in transforming the outfit into a lethal and highly effective fighting force, solidifying his place as one of the most iconic figures in modern military history. Mayne was born on January 11, 1915, in Newtownards, County Down, Northern Ireland. He was the sixth of 7 children, raised in a prominent Presbyterian family of Scottish descent. In his early years, Mayne attended Regent House Grammar School, where he would quickly distinguish himself as an exceptional athlete, excelling at golf, cricket, target shooting, and most notably, rugby. Following the completion of his secondary education, Mayne enrolled at the Queen's University of Belfast, where he began studying law, with the intention of pursuing a career as a solicitor. In August of 1936, he became the Irish University's heavyweight boxing champion, and later reached the finals of the British University's championship. In 1937, he was selected to represent Ireland's national rugby team in the Home Nations Championship against Wales. Over the next 2 years, he earned 6 international caps, playing as a lock forward. In 1938, he was chosen to join the British and Irish Lions Tour of South Africa. Going on to play in all 3 test matches, he quickly cemented his reputation as one of Ireland's toughest forwards. Standing at a towering height of 6'3". Mayne's raw athleticism, fierce competitiveness, and physical style of play would earn him widespread praise from both teammates and opponents alike. His time spent on this tour was also notably marked by his unruly behaviour off the field, which often led to disciplinary issues. His reckless antics were said to have included smashing up numerous hotel rooms, engaging in drunken brawls with dock workers, and a particularly infamous incident in which he reportedly dumped a freshly killed antelope carcass onto his hotel room floor following a late-night hunting adventure. In early 1939, Mayne graduated from Queen's with a law degree and obtained work as a solicitor, while continuing to pursue his rugby career. In the same year, he would join the Queen's University Officers Training Corps in preparation for military service ahead of the outbreak of World War II. Upon completion of his training, he received a commission with the 5th Light Anti-Aircraft Battery, Royal Artillery, before transferring to the Royal Ulster Rifles in April of 1940. Following Winston Churchill's call for a butcher and bolt raiding force in the wake of the Dunkirk evacuation, Mayne volunteered for the newly formed 11th Scottish Commando. He would first see action in June of 1941 as a second lieutenant during the Syria-Lebanon campaign, successfully leading a section of men against Vichy French forces during the Battle of Litani River. Having shown exceptional bravery during this action, Mayne was mentioned in dispatches for the first time, though the operation had enacted a heavy toll, with over 100 men killed or wounded. Following this engagement, tensions between Mayne and his superior officers began to rise, and he is reported to have clashed with his commanding officer, who he perceived as inexperienced, arrogant, and ill-suited for leadership in a combat environment. Although details of the incident vary, it is widely believed that Mayne struck the officer, an act of insubordination that resulted in his temporary incarceration and dismissal from 11 Commando. Despite this setback, Mayne's abilities did not go unnoticed. Lieutenant Owen McGonigal, a fellow officer of 11 Commando, recognised Mayne's raw potential and recommended him to Captain David Stirling, a charismatic young officer who was in the process of assembling a radical new type of Special Forces unit. According to most accounts, including Stirling's own recollections, he first met Mayne while he was in military detention and offered him a place in what would soon become L Detachment of the Special Air Service Brigade, the first incarnation of the SAS. From November of 1941 until the end of 1942, Mayne took part in numerous daring night raids deep behind enemy lines in Egypt and Libya. Operating in the vast deserts, the SAS wreaked havoc by destroying enemy aircraft on the ground, where Mayne became a pioneer in using military jeeps for surprise hit-and-run attacks, particularly targeting Access airfields. On the night of the 26th of July 1942, Mayne took part in what would be one of the most successful SAS raids of the Desert War, leading a force of 18 heavily armed jeeps, with British and Free French commandos launching a surprise assault on the German-held CD Harnesch airfield. Initially avoiding detection, they destroyed up to 40 German aircraft, escaping with the loss of only 3 jeeps and 2 men killed in action. Later, on the night of December 14, 1942, Mayne led a small team on a daring assault at Tamat airfield in Libya. The raid began with the team storming the officers' mess, where they killed several German and Italian personnel. Mayne's men then attached Lewis bombs to enemy aircraft and fired on others, targeting their cockpits. By the end of the night, 24 enemy aircraft were destroyed, along with fuel tanks, an ammunition dump, and a line of telegraph poles. The night was also considered a personal success for Mayne, when he ripped out the control panel of an enemy aircraft as a trophy. Following the capture of David Stirling by German forces in January of 1943, the 1st SAS Regiment was reorganised, with Mayne assuming command of the newly formed Special Raiding Squadron, which he would lead with distinction in subsequent operations. On July 10, 1943, Mayne led his unit in an amphibious assault on an enemy cliff-top gun emplacement at Capomura de Porco in Sicily, which was then followed up a few days later with a bold daylight assault on Augusta Port. In Italy, the SRS would play a vital role in the defensive action at Termoli in September of 1943. In 1944, the unit reverted to its previous title of the 1st SAS and took part in the Allied invasion of Europe. Between June and September of 1944, the outfit would operate in a guerrilla role, working behind enemy lines with French resistance fighters to sabotage transport and industrial infrastructure, while also ambushing enemy columns and coordinating airstrikes. By this stage of the war, the SAS suffered severely at the hands of German security forces, with dozens of captured SAS men having been murdered in accordance with Hitler's notorious Commando order. A directive issued on October 18, 1942, stating that all Allied commandos captured behind enemy lines, regardless of uniform or surrender, were to be executed immediately without trial. In 1945, Mayne would lead his troops into the heart of Germany at the head of the Allied advance. With the German army now growing increasingly desperate, they would face frequent ambushes and increased sniper activity. On April 9, 1945, near Oldenburg, Mayne would perform his last great feat of heroics, when he rescued some of his men who had been pinned down in a ditch following an ambush. During this action, Mayne would eliminate multiple enemy snipers in nearby farm buildings. He then dealt with the enemies situated in a patch of woodland by coolly driving up and down the adjacent road in a jeep, while his gunner poured fire into the German positions. For his actions, Mayne was recommended for the Victoria Cross, the highest military decoration for gallantry in the face of the enemy, though this recommendation was ultimately downgraded to the Distinguished Service Order. The exact reason for this denial remains unclear, though some historians believe that it was due to his unorthodox behaviour, including his disdain for military protocol. Following the war's end, Mayne resumed his legal career, working as a solicitor, and later as Secretary of the Law Society of Northern Ireland. On December 13, 1955, after a night of drinking with a friend in Bangor, Mayne was killed in a car accident when his vehicle collided with a parked truck and a telegraph pole. At the time of his passing, he was 40 years old. News of his death spread quickly, and his funeral drew hundreds of mourners, including many of his former comrades, with many tributes pouring in from across Britain and Ireland. In the many decades since his passing, Mayne's legend has only increased, and he has been the subject of numerous books and biographies. Additionally, in 1997, a bronze statue was dedicated to Mayne, outside the Newtownards Town Hall. His final resting place sits within the Mayne family plot at Movilla Cemetery.